My son slid a manila envelope across the kitchen table and said, "Dad, we need you to sign these before the end of the month. The house is in both our names, and Renee thinks it would just be cleaner if we consolidated everything." My daughter-in-law sat across from me, arms folded, not quite smiling. My hand went to the envelope. I didn't open it. Something about the way she said "cleaner" made my stomach tighten. 3 days later, I found out the documents inside would have transferred my half of the house. The house I'd built with 40 years of ironworker wages, entirely into her name. I never signed them. By the time I figured out what they'd actually been planning, my checking account had already been drained by $11,000, and my son hadn't returned a single call in 2 weeks. What happened next? They did not see coming. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I am not a complicated man. I worked 38 years for the same union local outside of Columbus, Ohio, ironworker, local 17. I climbed steel in all weather, put my body into bridges and office towers, and the kind of industrial work that nobody sees until the day it holds something up. My wife, Lorraine, God rest her, used to joke that I came home every evening smelling like rust and pride, and she meant it as a compliment. We had 2 kids. My daughter, Megan, lives in Tucson with her husband and 2 girls. She calls every Sunday. Then there's my son, Robbie, Robert Allen Marsh, 39 years old, sales manager at a medical supply company in Westerville, and for the better part of 4 years, the person I trusted most in the world after Lorraine passed. Lorraine died in February of 2021. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. I held her hand through all of it. After she was gone, the house, our house on Carver Mill Road, 4 bedrooms, the vegetable garden she planted along the south fence, felt like it had lost all its air. Robbie suggested I deed half of it into his name, for estate planning, he said, to avoid probate. I was 64 years old, and my wife had been in the ground for 5 months, and I trusted my son, so I did it. That was my first mistake. The second was letting his wife, Tessa, move into the spare room the following spring. She'd lost her job. Robbie said it would only be temporary. She brought 3 boxes of clothes, a coffee maker, and an attitude that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up from the first evening. Tessa is one of those people who manages to make everything feel like a negotiation. She'd refold dish towels after I'd already folded them. She'd move things in the pantry and not mention it. Small stuff. The kind of behavior that sounds petty when you describe it out loud, but creates a low-grade hum of tension in a house. The feeling of being a guest in your own kitchen. By that fall, Robbie was coming by less. Tessa was coming by more. She started handling my mail, said she was helping me stay organized. I let it go on longer than I should have. I noticed the first withdrawal in October. $11,200 moved from my personal checking to a joint account I didn't remember opening. When I called the bank, the woman on the phone told me the joint account was held by me and a Tessa Lynn Marsh. I sat there in the kitchen with the phone against my ear and felt something cold and clarifying move through me, the kind of feeling you get when you finally understand a thing you'd been refusing to see. I called Robbie, voicemail. I texted. Nothing. I drove to their apartment in Westerville and knocked. No answer, though his car was in the lot. I drove home, sat at the kitchen table, and thought about Lorraine. She'd been better at reading people than I ever was. 32 years of marriage, and she never once misjudged someone's intentions. Not really. She used to say, "Danny, when something feels wrong, it usually is, and the longer you wait to deal with it, the more it costs you." I used to think she was talking about the plumbing. I went to my filing cabinet. I pulled out every bank statement I had from the past 18 months, and I started reading. The transfers had been happening since April. Small at first, $200, $350, once even $84, which struck me as almost insulting, like she was testing how little I paid attention. Then larger, $800, $2,000 in June, $4,500 in August. Total, over 18 months, just under $22,000. There was also a charge I didn't recognize from a property management company in Dublin, Ohio. I wrote down the name. I called my daughter that evening. Megan listened without interrupting, which took some effort, because she's not a quiet person. When I finished, she said, "Dad, please don't do anything until you talk to someone who knows what they're doing legally. Promise me." I promised. The next morning I called an elder law attorney named Catherine Wolfe, whose name I found through the Ohio State Bar Association's referral line. She was in her mid-50s, practical, and had been handling financial exploitation cases for 20 years. I drove to her office in Upper Arlington, sat across from her desk, and spread out 18 months of bank statements. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, "Mr. Marsh, what I'm looking at is textbook financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Ohio Revised Code 2903 Fine Feen. That's elder abuse. It includes theft from a person 60 or older through deception or unauthorized account access. This is a felony." I stared at her. She opened a joint account in my name. "Did you consent to that in writing?" "No." She wrote something on her legal pad. "Then it was opened fraudulently. I want you to go to your bank today, in person. Request a freeze on all outgoing transfers. Ask for a history of every authorization that was used to open that joint account. Get the documents." I did it that afternoon. The bank manager, a younger man who kept apologizing like he'd personally wronged me, confirmed that the joint account had been opened using my social security number and a power of attorney form that had been signed and notarized in March. I had no memory of signing any power of attorney. I took a photograph of the document on my phone. I looked at the signature on the bottom. It looked like mine, the shape of it, the general slope. But something was slightly wrong with the capital D. I've signed my name Daniel Marsh roughly 100,000 times. I know how my D looks. I called Catherine from the parking lot. They forged a power of attorney. A long pause. Then her voice, steady. "Bring me everything. We're going to the Franklin County DA." The next 4 days I moved carefully and quietly. I did not call Robbie. I did not confront Tessa. I gathered everything I could find. Bank statements, the fraudulent POA document, property tax records showing my sole ownership of Carver Mill Road prior to the 2021 deed change, and a receipt from March of last year showing I'd been in Cincinnati visiting Megan the weekend the POA had supposedly been signed. I had hotel records. I had a photo on my phone from that Saturday of me and my granddaughters at the Columbus Zoo, date stamped, location tagged. I hadn't been in Columbus the day I allegedly signed that document. I'd been 4 hours away. The signature was forged. Catherine submitted everything to the Franklin County District Attorney's Office. She also filed a civil complaint to have my financial power of attorney revoked and to initiate recovery of the stolen funds. She referred me to a forensic document examiner, a retired FBI agent named Walsh, who confirmed within 72 hours that the signature on the POA was not consistent with my known exemplars, my handwriting on tax returns, union documents, and Lorraine's original will. I'm going to be honest. During those 4 days, I cried once. It was late on a Tuesday night, sitting in the kitchen with the lights off, thinking about the fact that my son who I'd taught to ride a bike in this driveway, who I'd driven to every wrestling meet from 6th grade through senior year, had either participated in this or allowed his wife to do it while he looked the other way. Both possibilities felt about equally bad. I called Megan. She answered on the first ring. It was midnight in Tucson. "Dad, are you okay?" "No," I said. "Not really." She booked a flight for Thursday. The meeting I'd been dreading came on a Saturday afternoon. I'd asked Robbie to come to the house, said I needed to talk about some financial paperwork, kept it vague. He showed up alone without Tessa, which surprised me. He looked tired. He sat at the same kitchen table where, 3 months earlier, he'd slid that manila envelope across to me. I'd placed a folder in the center of the table before he arrived. "I need to show you some things," I said. He reached for the folder. I let him open it. Inside, the fraudulent POA, flagged with a yellow post-it reading, "Not my signature." The bank statement showing $22,000 moved out of my account, the hotel records, and the zoo photo from Cincinnati, timestamped the day I supposedly signed the document. He stared at the papers for a long time. His face went through several things. "Dad, don't," I said. "Tell me what you knew." He put the folder down. He didn't say anything for almost 30 seconds. "I didn't know about the POA," he finally said. His voice was quiet. I swear to you, I didn't know she'd done that. I knew about the transfers. She told me it was just temporary, that she'd put it back, that you'd said it was okay. Did you ask me? He didn't answer. Did you pick up the phone and ask your father if he'd said it was okay for your wife to move $11,000 out of his account? His jaw tightened. No. Then what you did, I said, is let it happen, which makes you part of it. Megan was sitting in the corner of the room. I'd asked her to be there. She didn't say a word. She just watched her brother. I leaned forward. The DA has everything. This is out of my hands now. What you need to understand is that I didn't call you here to give you a chance to explain. I called you here so you could hear me say this directly. I am done protecting people who are willing to watch me get robbed. Robbie drove away 20 minutes later. He didn't say much else. Tessa was served 3 days after that. Fraud, financial exploitation of an elderly person, felony theft, Ohio Revised Code, just like Catherine had told me. The POA forgery added a separate charge, forgery of a legal instrument, a third-degree felony. The property management charge I'd written down turned out to be connected to a storage unit in Dublin that Tessa had been renting under my name. When the investigator from the DA's office opened it, they found 4 pieces of furniture from my house, including Lorraine's china cabinet, the one her mother had given us as a wedding gift, along with several boxes that contained things I hadn't even noticed were missing. Old tools of mine, my late father-in-law's pocket watch. They'd been planning to sell it. I'm going to pause here and tell you about something small that happened the week after Tessa was charged, because it matters to how this story ends. I was at the grocery store, Kroger, the one on Henderson Road, and I ran into my neighbor from 3 houses down, a man named Gil who I'd waved at for 12 years without knowing much about him. He'd evidently heard something through the neighborhood grapevine, because he stopped his cart next to mine in the cereal aisle and said, "Danny, I heard you're dealing with something pretty serious. You doing all right?" I told him I was managing. He nodded. My sister went through something like that. Her stepson took her for $60,000. He paused. She didn't think anyone would believe her. Waited 2 years. Lost most of it. He looked at me. Good for you for moving fast. I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. How many people don't move fast? How many people sit in dark kitchens and decide it isn't worth the upheaval, or that they won't be believed, or that confronting family is more painful than absorbing the loss? I understood that feeling. I'd felt it myself for about 48 hours before Lorraine's voice in my head said, "Danny, deal with it." The deed on the house was the next thing. Because Robbie was co-owner of record, and because his wife had been charged with a felony, Catherine moved to have the 2021 deed transfer voided on the grounds that it had been obtained under false pretenses, specifically that Robbie had represented it to me as a routine estate planning measure, when it had, in fact, created the legal pathway that Tessa exploited. The court agreed. The deed was restored to sole ownership in my name in March. Robbie called me twice during that period. I answered the second time. "Dad, I know I can't undo what happened. I know that." His voice sounded different, smaller somehow. "I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not even asking you to forgive me right now. I just need you to know that I didn't plan any of this. I was an idiot. I should have asked questions and I didn't." I sat with that for a moment. "You know what the worst part is," I said. "It's not the money. The money I'll recover. It's that you let me be alone in this house for 2 years after your mother died, and all that time, while I was trying to figure out how to live without her, you were sitting on information about what your wife was doing to my accounts, and you chose not to say a word. That's what I can't get over, Robbie. Not yet." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then I hope you figure out who you are without her," I said. "I genuinely hope that, but I need you to leave me alone for a while." I hung up. Tessa pled guilty in October, 11 months after I'd first noticed that transfer. The plea agreement included restitution, the full $22,000, plus the assessed value of the personal property taken from the storage unit, which came to an additional $6,400. She received 3 years probation, a suspended sentence, and a permanent civil judgment against her that means I can garnish her wages if she ever stops paying restitution. She will never set foot in my house again. Megan flew back out the week after the sentencing. We sat on the back porch with coffee and watched the leaves come down off the maple tree that Lorraine had planted the year we moved in. 1989, the year Robbie was born. We didn't talk about the case much. We talked about her girls, about Thanksgiving plans, about whether I was eating enough. Before she left for the airport, she hugged me for a long time. "Mom would be proud of you, Dad," she said. "I just paid attention," I said. "That's all I did." "Most people don't," she said. "That's the whole problem." She was right. It is. And I've thought about that a lot in the months since, because I didn't do anything heroic. I found a number in a referral directory, drove to an office, spread some papers on a desk, and let people who knew more than me do their jobs. The hard part wasn't the investigation or the court dates. The hard part was the moment in the Kroger parking lot, sitting in my truck before I drove home, when I had to admit to myself that my son had known. Not everything, maybe, but enough. And he'd said nothing. I still don't know exactly where Robbie and I land. He's been sending cards. Christmas, Father's Day. They're short. No explanations, no apologies anymore. Just checking in. I haven't thrown them away. I don't know what that means yet. I'm 66 years old, and I'm still figuring it out. What I do know is this: the house is mine. The vegetable garden along the south fence is starting to come back. I replanted it this past April, first time since Lorraine got sick. The tomatoes are better than I expected, and on Sunday mornings I sit on that back porch with coffee, and sometimes I talk to her, just quietly. The way you do when you're not sure anyone's listening, but you say it anyway. I told her we kept the house, that the china cabinet is back in the dining room, that Megan calls every week. I told her I was fine, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. If you're going through something like this, I want you to hear me say it plainly. Check your accounts, all of them. Today. Don't wait until something feels wrong, because by then it usually already has been wrong for a while. And if you find something you can't explain, don't call the family member you're suspicious of first. Call an attorney. Write down every date, every number, every name. Take photographs. The paper trail you build in the first week is the thing that decides everything that comes after. I'm not telling you to assume the worst about the people you love. I'm telling you that loving someone doesn't mean you can't be deceived by them. And protecting yourself isn't a betrayal. It's the most honest thing you can do.